Good day, everyone. I'm Denis Gagné, CEO and CTO of Trisatec, and today we're very pleased to have with us Tom de Beauvois from Advanced Component Research, who will be presenting to us about the Knowledge Worker Copilot, which is a very interesting advance in technology. So, Tom, I leave it to you.
Thank you, Denis. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm very thrilled to introduce you to what we considered a truly groundbreaking solution for your enterprise challenging. So we're going to be exploring the Knowledge Worker Copilot, which is the first transformative copilot specifically designed for your message-based organizational workflows. Unlike the other copilots, which are focused on what the individual does, this copilot is designed for knowledge workers and the work they do across organizations. So please join me as we explore how the Knowledge Worker Copilot is poised to transform your critical operations. So next slide. So to ensure all the critical aspects and deliver maximum value today, here's our agenda. We're going to set the context for the pervasive challenges many of your organizations face. And following that, we're going to explain the problem we're trying to solve, a significant bottleneck that traditional organization systems cannot address. They're very resistant to modeling. So then we'll pivot to our solution and explain how we tackle that problem with a revolutionary approach. Here's where we're going to introduce the Knowledge Worker Copilot. And to make this tangible, we'll walk through a representative scenario. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up in a conclusion that reinforces the impact we believe the Knowledge Worker Copilot can have on your enterprise. Next slide. So what is the context? Knowledge work is an ever-increasing portion of the enterprise's work. Some analysts think that it's increasingly more than 50% of what organizations do to sustain the organization. The reason for this is that as things became increasingly digitized and automated, those tasks fell away, the route tasks, and what it remains is this very difficult work that we call knowledge work. Next slide, please. So, and there are examples all over the place in many different organizations, such as especially contract management, procurement, sourcing, compliance, risk management, customer relations. Many of these areas employ knowledge workers who are highly skilled at their activities. Next slide. So knowledge workers, in order to get into the specifics of this solution, you need to understand what these individuals do, right? They're the engine of your organization's intellectual capital. Knowledge workers are, by definition, highly experienced and highly educated individuals. They don't operate on repetitive task-driven functions, right? Crucially, they're also what we call swivel chair integrators. They're very adept at moving around through business systems, using your core office productivity suites, spreadsheets, CRMs, ERPs, and numerous different web applications to get things done. So they're your human glue that holds the organization together. However, this sophisticated human-oriented integration and high-level judgment comes at a cost, right? We increasingly hear reports of knowledge worker being overworked, right? The complexity and volume of the stuff that they have to do and the influences of the current processes, it leads to burnout and increasing productivity. So this is very challenging, and this is what we're attempting to address, and we believe we do address with the Knowledge Worker Copilot. The next slide, please. So what is the problem we're trying to solve? Let's zoom in and look at the specific challenges that our overworked knowledge workers face, right? At the core, we have humans that are doing coordinating complex activities and acting as that swivel chair integrator across many systems. The human-centric integration leads to a significant amount of unpredictable, time-consuming activities, such as information coordinating, constantly interacting between emails and documents, the correct information, making sure it's in the correct format, retrieving and looking for the right document, and being aware of the situation that's ongoing in a particular context, and then transferring data, cut and paste, copy and paste from one system and the other. And on top of that, the same knowledge worker has to be scheduling meetings and managing different calendars and overhead that occurs. And those are the hidden costs of these current workflows that they face. And this, again, is a essential problem that's very difficult with current approaches to digitize. Next slide, please. So this constant juggling of cases and the cognitive brain work to maintain the context creates a lot of operational challenges that we hear about a lot. First, we're dealing with a lot of unpredictable sequences of activities, right? We don't know exactly what's going to happen and when that's going to happen. And because that work is driven by human judgment and evolving circumstances, the workflows that we're working with are non-deterministic. They're very difficult to automate, what I call model resistant, using traditional scripting, right? So that human element adds a variety that standard automation tools struggle to accommodate. Things are always evolving in a non.
So I believe we lost the connection with Tom at this.
Oh, next slide, please.
Yes, Tom, we lost you a little bit, so
okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So, let's just say there's a lot of situations that the knowledge worker has to adhere to. Standard operating procedures have to be followed. There's strict corporate governance policies that govern the business context. And then we have laws and regulations that dictate how the contracts and data have to be handled. And the confluence of these unpredictable workflows and stringent compliance regulations is precisely what traditional systems break down and where we need a new approach. So next slide again. Are we ready? Okay. Okay, so let's move down. Denis, the slide, how do knowledge workers achieve anything? Can you move back just one way? Yes, okay, that's the one we went. So given those challenges, we beg the question of how do our knowledge workers achieve anything at all? And it's remarkable that that these knowledge workers are masters of their cognitive synthesis. They're experts at judging in their heads all of the things that are going on and understanding the context of what's happening with these disparate systems. They're juggling multiple tasks and threads, but typically the conversations almost always and interactions that happen almost always go around some common thread, right? Those threads could be a particular project, the communications around a specific deliverable, something that needs to be done, communications pertaining to a specific contract. What we're going to call these threads is a case as opposed to a process. Because and Denis can kind of, Denis, could you, we talked about this before, it's not really a process, it's a case. Could you give us a little bit of insight into why we're calling these things cases?
Yeah, so it's basically just because of a change of focus. So within a process, we have a predefined series of paths that can be taken. There's multiple of them, but they're kind of predefined. If this happened, then you turn there, and then when I'm at that stage, I can turn there. Well, when we're thinking of a case, our actions are dictated, or the action of the knowledge worker are dictated by the current state of the global either case here that we use. So the case file, so a new element comes in, we have to react to it. So it's a more reactive and non-deterministic way. Well, it's still deterministic once we have this event that creates a particular condition and action.
Agree. Good, thank you. So let's go to our solution. So how do we address this intricate landscape of dynamic workflows and cognitive load and compliance demands? So our answer is the Knowledge Worker Copilot. So the Knowledge Worker Copilot is not a replacement for human expertise, but it's augmented intelligence. It's designed to enhance, not automate away, the critical judgment and experience that defines knowledge work. And at the core, we have an intelligent digital assistant whose function is to prepare and organize essential elements of the knowledge work. This includes managing events, streamlining communications, organizing documentation, and simplifying data entry, all related to the cases that we're talking about. Crucially, what it does is keeps the human knowledge worker firmly in control. So we believe in that partnership model. The human knowledge worker remains responsible and accountable, leveraging their expertise, while the co-pilot provides support to execute those decisions more efficiently and effectively, and provide information and data and support without getting in the way of what the knowledge worker is doing. Next slide, please. Make sure we're coordinating. Yes. So what is the impact that knowledge worker delivers? We're talking about measurable improvements that directly affect your organization and how it's performing and its risk posture. So the Copilot, Knowledge Worker Copilot, reduces contract cycle time. We streamline the communication, documentation, and approval processes, and we significantly shorten the time it takes to move a contract from inception to execution. We increase the compliance visibility in real time. We're gaining immediate insight into adherence to policies, procedures, and regulations across the cases, right? We cut your swivel chair efforts. So we automate the data transfer and information retrieval that consumes so much time across the that your knowledge worker has to do in order to do their task. We're cutting it, I mean, very simply, we're eliminating a lot of the cutting, pasty, and searching and diving around for the information that they need in order to accomplish their task. So, and then we assure audit readiness at all times. So we don't believe in handing attachments around. Of course, right, all of the artifacts that are associated with the case are stored in a repository, and it gives you a version control and an audit trail, right, that's completely audible. So those aren't incremental improvements, they're transformative gains across the organization. So we're writing your draft emails with a lot of contextual information in them, and that's really reducing what that knowledge worker has to do. So next slide, please. So what are the different roles? So, the power is not only in its applicability to broad applicability, but to provide highly specific role-based value. For legal teams, right, we're meticulously tracking obligations and deadlines across multiple versions of contract. So this eliminates the risk of missed dates and assures proactive management of legal commitments. For compliance officers, it always acts on sentiment, automatically monitoring evolving regulations and flagging potential impacts on cases. Right? For the procurement department, right, the Knowledge Worker Copilot can actively flag risks or delays with vendor agreements, right? You know what's happening and when it's happening. And it can identify potential issues in communications and deliverable status. For contract managers, it significantly reduces your administrative burden by automatically creating crucial follow-ups and milestone alerts. This assures that critical stages of the contract are never missed and all stakeholders are kept proactively informed. In essence, it's a specific specialized assistant for each of these vital roles, and it amplifies their effectiveness and reduces their exposure to risk and efficiency. So next slide, please. So how did we create this? To achieve this level of assistance and control, we are built on a powerful foundation of neurosymbolic artificial intelligence. What does that mean? We're embracing the best of both worlds. It's a marriage of a nuanced marriage of the generative AI ability to interpret and understand unstructured language, context, and intent with the deterministic power and human-related logic of established BPM, business process modeling, BPMN, decision modeling in our system, right? So our models, including CMMN, DMN, and BPMN, and notation are crucial to our approach. I was just telling Denis before this, right? We have about 140 different processes and decisions that will accomplish what you're going to see in the demo. And I'm not really sure it could be done with a group of programmers writing JavaScript or Golang or whatnot. So this allows us to this allows the Copilot to understand and interpret these unstructured communications. That's the neuro part. And then to apply the precise rule-based logic and automatic workflows based on these highly defined business models. So the neurosymbolic approach is what allows us to deliver the intelligence, adaptability, and control that traditional AI or BPM alone cannot provide. So it's the core of how we're bridging these two. Denis, do you have some comments at this point? So we've been working on this for a while.
Yeah, so the neurosymbolic AI has been certainly my go-to solution for 30 years. So we're always looking at how we can leverage both the symbolic aspect of these visual notation, such as BPMN, CMMN, and DMN, that gives us a controlled deterministic way that is human defined. And then we can leverage the adaptability of the non-symbolic or neural networks that are behind most of the technology we use today as AI. So this to us, this has always been the target and the solution. And as some people may know, you and I, Tom, have been working on these notions for 5 years, more
Yes.
specifically
Yes.
in the context of this project we're presenting today.
The only other comment I have is that when you see the demo, if we're going to create another type of case, maybe a case on a complex sales, we don't create more BPMN, DMN models, only if there's some external system you need to integrate with, right? You basically just train the Copilot on what that case needs to do. So let's have the next slide, please. So what are the basic cases? Are contracts of any sort, any type of contract contract that requires deliverables, products, services, and reports and so forth that need to occur in order to complete the contract. We're going to talk about a real estate sales contract. Compliance to rules and regulations. So we're checking the information and the conversations and the documents to make sure that they comply with the rules and regulations that we're operating. Standard operating procedures. I always come back again to the ones that I've heard that are very complicated, like building a metal building can be very difficult, or design build, right? Or installing pretty complicated equipment at some facility. There's a lot of steps in between. There's a lot of deliverables that need to accomplish that particular objective. Next slide, please. And then most importantly, getting back to the other memory of every evolving case. And this is really the power behind all of this. For each critical undertaking, right? So we capture all these critical elements, every relevant event as they occur, as they are connected to the case, right? Critical documents and their version, not just the documents, but the content of the documents and understanding them. The specific stakeholder roles involved, who is responsible for what, and what did they need to do. All of this captured intelligence allows us to orchestrate a very powerful synergy between the BPM plus workflows and generative AI reasoning. And it proactively manages follow-ups, ensuring no critical action is needed. Again, remember that these processes are long-running processes. They may not, no activity may occur for days or even weeks, but when that activity occurs, we pull up this living memory, and that gives us the context of everything that's occurring with that, right? Which is, something that we sort of miss with some of the discussion about the large language models. So anyway, ultimately, this living memory, which can stay around for a long time, makes certain that your stakeholders are precisely aligned, operated with a shared, up-to-date, 360 view of all the actions, activities, contexts, and obligations. So let's go to the next slide. So the basic mechanics of the Knowledge Worker Copilot, right, is that it's working with terms and conditions, right? These are specific provisions, if we look at it from a contract viewpoint, of the rights, obligations, and remedies that a party has in a legally binding agreement, right? In a project plan or a standard operating procedure, it could be a milestone or some type of checkpoint that's occurred where we have approval or a confluence of approvals on a specific project. Deliverables are tangible or intangible outputs. They could be goods or services. They could be physical services, material or reports, and or consulting. Any type of thing that the party is obligated to produce, perform, or transfer under the project, under the case. And they're defined by specifications, timelines, quality standards, and acceptance criteria. So events are the static calendar dates that we have that are contained within the contract that define the overall scope of that case. And then roles are the specific authority of each stakeholder in the contract or project plan. We're using RACI in our case. We want to track the factors that drive what the knowledge worker needs in order to accomplish their mission. So this is the core attributes of what we're working with in order to accomplish that case, right? Let's do to the next slide. So how does this system actually work from a user perspective. Let's walk through what happens in the initiation of a case. It begins very simply. The human knowledge worker submits the contract to the Copilot. This action, whether it's in direct upload and integration or an existing system, but mostly it's an email attachment, as we'll see in the demo, that creates a new, uniquely identifiable work case in the system, right? So, and then immediately the Copilot gets to work. It processes the document and it's reflected in your central dashboard, and we'll see that, right? And then the terms, conditions, and deliverables are extracted from the document, and they're all defined within the context of accomplishing a case. We'll get very specific in the demonstration. So let's go to the next slide. Make sure. So the knowledge worker supports the work needed to manage the case, right? A case, as we've mentioned, is a specific instance of a particular project plan, compliance requirement, or a specific instance of a contract, right? The critical factors that we're monitoring are the deadlines, the clauses, the deliverables, the compliance checkpoints. Those are extracted from that document. And then this is where our active monitoring comes into play, and we'll see this in our dashboard. We're really monitoring the associated schedules and understanding upcoming dates and events, right? And simultaneously, it is analyzing the email correspondence and the documents associated with each case. So next slide, please. So let's talk about the real differentiator, right? So we go beyond simple keyword detection and the ability to contextualize, and we provide the ability to contextualize, monitor, and understand the conversation. What I keep talking about is conversational understanding. We know that deliverables within a case are not just static, they involve dynamic processes. You ask someone to do something for you, and there is a conversation that goes back and forth that occurs, and that might modify what's actually provided. People have questions, there are meetings, more discussions, anyway. And then furthermore, that thing might need to be reviewed or approved, right? So we understand from the document and from the procedure what needs to be done with that particular deliverable. Next slide, please. So the Knowledge Worker Copilot really leverages the productivity suite, right? So we do not provide another type of application that you need to use in order to work with you, right? It's basically understanding your emails, working with your calendar, and then managing all the documents across the document repository, right? So the people your knowledge workers who are working with the Knowledge Worker Copilot really don't need to, they need to understand what it does, but they don't learn new software. So let's move to the next slide. And then again, we're really working with deliverables quite often, like what are the specific tasks that need to be done within the context of a case, right? And so when the conditions and terms and conditions arise or the milestone is reached, the deliverable process is initiated. And we'll see that what happens with the demonstration that we're going to show, right? The email text basically tells the Copilot what's happening, and the Copilot monitors it and is aware of what's doing. As we mentioned, right, the knowledge worker retains control of what's happening. They can cancel, they can change, and the Copilot will just simply respond to either the conversations or the directives from the Copilot. So the Copilot in action. Denis, can you cover this a little bit?
Certainly. Thank you, Tom. So here's a CMMN, the case management model and notation model. I know it's a bit small and the intent is not necessarily for you to read the details, but it gives you a notional sense of how this framework around which the Knowledge Copilot works is based on a higher level CMMN model that dictates what is possible. So on certain event, under certain condition, what action can be taken. So you have this event, condition, action type of situation. So here you see a different piece of information coming in or a particular time being met. Then you have those different events that are taking place.
Okay. Next slide. Let's go to the demo. So we're going to go through a real estate transaction example. The reason I use the real estate transaction because is that it's a very complicated contract. There are different funding types and different clauses and compliance rules that need to happen in order to sell a property in the United States. Right. Keep in mind, this is just a pattern, right? And you can see that it's very specifically tailored to the real estate transaction, but it's a pattern that any other type of system that needs this type of knowledge work can apply to. So next slide. Who are the stakeholders? We have Pat, you'll see in the demo, who's what we call a transaction manager. She's responsible for actually creating to bringing the sale home. All right, the general inspector is the person who is doing inspections on a property. As you know, when you sell a property, particularly in the South, you need to do a number of different types of inspections and for wood destroying insects or well water. And then we have Angie, who is the real estate broker, and she's the broker in charge of the sale. And then finally, the Copilot is helping all of this happen. Good. So we're going to upload a sales contract. Right. Next slide, please. There we go. So go to the previous one. So very quickly. So we're going to launch the demo now, and it's basically a straight through use case of the Copilot, right? And we will see how the Copilot takes that new document and manages all the terms and conditions, and then we'll go through one deliverable, which is the need for wood destroying insect inspection. And then finally, how we change a term and condition. So Denis, can you start the demo?
Pat's Google Workspace, where she is a transaction manager who is going to be managing a new real estate sale. We'll demonstrate how the Copilot enhances Pat's workspace to help her complete this contract. The Copilot will create a new calendar and record the important events. Here are Pat's existing contracts. The Knowledge Worker case will add 4 new contacts based on the information in the new sales contract. Next, we have a dashboard that displays the terms and conditions of the contract and the status of the deliverables. We'll examine how the changes created by conversations and documents are reflected in the deliverables status and conditions. Pat has a new contract for the sale of a property at Leonore Lane, and she will send this contract to the digital assistant. Now, let's switch back to Pat's workspace and begin working on the case for that contract. We will open the draft email, attach the PDF of the contract, and send it to the digital assistant. The Copilot initiated the case assistance and immediately created several draft email messages requesting property inspections. The Copilot has created a calendar for the contract, and the events that the knowledge worker needs to monitor are placed on the calendar. The most important being the settlement date. when all the terms and conditions of the contract must be met. The Copilot has also created the 4 contacts for the buyer, seller, buyer's agent, and seller's agent and recorded them in Pat's contact list. Depending on their role, these individuals are included in emails, scheduled events, and meetings. The Copilot created an entry on the dashboard that Pat will use to monitor the progress of the sale. The dashboard includes terms and conditions, with a criticality rating indicating the importance of a particular item to achieving the objective. Additionally, a sentiment score measures the tone of email communication, ranging from -1 to +1, with negative and positive conversations being rated accordingly. The same is happening with evaluating deliverables, how critical they are, and what the sentiment of the conversations is. The dashboard indicates that the 2 deliverables have had draft emails pending approval to move forward. Now we will return to Pat's workspace and use the draft message to request a wood-destroying insect inspection of the property. The draft email includes the important contract variables: the seller's name, address, email, and phone number. It also includes a request to schedule the inspection. Pat will complete the email with the inspector's email address and name and send it. Upon returning to the dashboard for that case, the Copilot has noted that the deliverable was requested. Now let's switch over to the inspector inbox. The inspector opens Pat's request and replies with a schedule. When we look at the dashboard in Pat's account workspace, we see that the Copilot shows the deliverable as being scheduled, and when we return to Pat's calendar, we see that the schedule is shown for the date and time stated by the inspector. Now that we've returned to the inspector's account, the inspector will forward some information to Pat regarding a conversation they had. The information on managing termite damage does not appear to be the deliverable requested. The Copilot understands the conversation in the attachment. When we return to Pat's dashboard, we see that the PDF that the inspector sent can be viewed with the link associated with the deliverable. We would also note that all of the artifacts, such as the originating contract, that are attached to the case will be clickable on the dashboard. Now let's return to the inspector's inbox and forward the results of the inspection to Pat. The results are in this scanned image in the PDF and include important handwritten notes that indicate evidence of termites. Let's return to Pat's workspace. The Copilot recognized from the email and the contents of the attachment that the requested deliverable was provided. This demonstrates the importance of conversational understanding both in the text within the email thread and in the documents that are provided. Because the inspection is complete, the Copilot creates a draft email for Pat to review, edit, and forward to the stakeholders in the contract. The Copilot has summarized the results of the email threads that created the deliverable and the contents of the report. You see that the handwritten notes were correctly extracted. This includes the check mark. As an aside, the date on the scanned document does not match the date that I created this demonstration. Also, it's important to note that in a real estate contract, the critical date is the earliest date that you can inspect the property before closing. Links to both files are included here. It's up to Pat to decide whether to include the information that the inspector sent. In a real-world scenario, different conversations in different files can be sent back and forth, and it's important not to constrain or expect that the conversation will flow in exactly a predetermined sequence. Now let's return to Pat's dashboard and ask the digital assistant to summarize the results or the current state of this case. The digital assistant reviews calendar events, the status of various terms and conditions, and deliverables, and then summarizes the key points that Pat needs to focus on. Again, this is a recording of a straight-through actual sequence, and the dates correspond to Sunday, July 27th. Now that the deliverable is complete, the criticality is 0 and shows green. The sentiment of the discussions is positive, and this metric is also green. We have reviewed the process for deliverables. Let's discuss how the terms and conditions are updated. In this example, we will update the buyer credit report by sending a message to Angie, the broker. These factors are updated according to the conversations that take place around this case. We return to Pat's inbox and send an email that discusses the credit report. We send a discussion of the credit report to Angie, the broker. In the paragraph, some of the extraneous things that happened are discussed. Upon opening the property closing folder, we notice that the label has been applied to the email Pat just sent. You can also see the thread concerning the request for a WDI inspection. A case may have dozens of emails associated with it, so this is useful for locating the messages. Once again, we return to the dashboard, and we see that the credit report has been marked as received, the criticality is now green, and the sentiment of the discussion is positive.
So, Denis?
Yes, Tom, we're back onto the presentation.
Okay, so again, this could apply to any type of regulated workflow, statements of work, inspections, a procurement officer, it basically, since we're breaking the case into its fundamental components, any document that we can extract those fundamental components, terms, conditions, milestones, events, contacts, and deliverables, we can create the same scenario for that. Next slide, please. So we are we believe that the Knowledge Worker Copilot will have many benefits and capabilities that will substantially improve the way knowledge workers accomplish the objectives within their case. So, and then we can operationalize contracts into living workflows. We can automate that case. The communications that occur once we define that allow a deep contextual understanding over a long-running period of time of what's happening with that particular confluence of the case, right? What happens, as I hope you can see, is that we have a lot of enhancement of the productivity because it's easier for them to accomplish their job because the information that they need is available in front of them. And then finally, from terms of compliance, legal compliance, right, we have comprehensive artifact management. In other words, all of the artifacts associated with a case are stored and version controlled and in a repository. So overall, we can demonstrate an improvement in compliance and agility. Next slide, please. So again, just to finalize, right, we're ensuring that no obligation that's told to the Copilot digital assistant is forgotten, right? And it probably will find patterns that you will miss, right? So, and then specific drafts would be created, including follow-up emails, so you don't have to create those. So that's the end. Do we have any questions or?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
One of the questions which I already answered was Timothy was asking, who trains the AIs for contextual awareness of exchange? There is no training of the AI. We're using off-the-shelf large language models without any fine-tuning. The context is really maintained by all the different case, process, and decision models that provide all the deterministic gearing around it. So we're basically just using generative AI as a way of understanding the context so it can be put at the right place within the case and process and decision. Another question for you, Tom, I guess, is there a workflow diagram, BPM?
It's difficult to get that from this presentation, but what we were saying is that the workflow, there is no specific workflow diagram because one cannot be drawn. So that's why Denis had put the CMMN diagram to show that what we are doing is we're responding to events. Now, there are small workflows like give me a deliverable, here's the schedule, and so forth, right? But they're not significant to the overall case. The case itself evolves based on the communication. Is that clear?
Yeah, so as Tom mentioned during the presentation, there's over 140 different models, decision, process, and case model that make up the scaffolding for the knowledge coworker, the knowledge copilot. So the copilot basically is supported by many tools, if you want to call them, our capability. One is, how do you address a request for a deliverable? Then there's a process that will define how that's done. And the copilot will use that process to do that work. And there's all kinds of different process and decision models that can support the different type of situations that arise. But these models are generic. They're not specific about real estate. They're just, okay, how do you treat a request for a deliverable? Here are the steps that you do. You reply to the person, etc., etc., etc. And I don't see any more questions, and we're a little bit over our time. So, Tom, thank you very much for this presentation. This is quite amazing. It actually stretches pretty much the realm of the art of the possible, I think, in today's technology.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone. Thank you for
Bye, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there.